What ho chaps, I'm Magical Mike and it's the end of 2021, so time once more to talk about all that went on, or that didn't quite make it to the channel over the course of the year. It's also New Year's Eve, so there's going to be random fireworks in the background that I may or may not actually notice in the editing, so fun times. I do one of these videos every year. I've done since 2012 apparently. I've been on YouTube longer than that, but yikes, that makes this a 10-year series. 10 blooming years, man. I've been on YouTube for over a decade. It's a way to make myself feel old, huh? Looking back at all those old ones is a bit of a trip, let me tell you, and if you want to see next year's video, then leave a like and maybe subscribe for it. And if not for that arbitrary reason, then I'll be talking about whatever plans I have for the channel in this video too, so if there's something that you like the sound of, then maybe that'll be a good reason to sub instead. And you know, while I'm at it, I might as well ask you to leave a comment too, like how are you doing, what have you been playing, and all that sort of stuff. I've actually got a few legit questions that I might ask throughout the video actually. And as I always say, the whole point of this YouTube thing is to hear your experiences too. That's the fun of it for me. So, would you believe it, we're still in a global pandemic. Yeah, that's 2 years of it now, and it's done a number on the world in some obvious and some more subtle ways too. I said last time that content creators have been able to benefit a little bit from it, with everyone finding themselves at home and with more opportunity to get into gaming and consuming our videos and articles and whatever else. So despite not putting out much this year, I've also managed to maintain various numbers that are important to the YouTube overlords, which is nice, so thanks guys. Again, I'm just mentioning that whole situation for historical note to look back at like I did last year, so let's move on. Like I said, I didn't really put out much content in 2021. The first video I did was one of my favourites though, and looking back on it, it still makes me nod to myself and feel quite content about it. The Final Fantasy VII Quids-In review. This one was still properly edited and using relevant footage for the whole thing, so my plan to cut back on that kind of process still hasn't quite made it to the Quids-In series yet. I'm pleased with how this review turned out. There was tons to say about the game, and basically anyone who's anyone, and anyone who's done some kind of review on it would probably agree. 25 minutes is a relatively lengthy review for the series, where I really try and knock that runtime down as much as is reasonable, but it really isn't enough to cover everything in that game in as much detail as I would have liked. It was my first time playing FF7, and as much as I could have clickbaited that title, I didn't. And I mean, the game is a classic and everyone loves it for so many reasons, but that kind of popular opinion always makes me want to see for myself if it actually holds up. It means I get to go into a lot of these popular games with some kind of skepticism, and it's always a great experience to be surprised and proven wrong, which FF7 did in absolute spades. I spent a while talking about the music, which I still love, the gameplay, the story, the aged art style, and all sorts of other things. But there were a ton of details that I could have gone on at length about and chose not to in the end. If there's anyone out there that's listening to me talk about this right now and still hasn't played FF7, then you've really got to try it, you really do. And that is the only Quids-In video that I managed to squeeze out this year. Wow. I mean, at least if there was only one, it's a worthy game to hold that title for a year, right? I got plenty of games that I actually played this year that could have made it, but I got tied up for various reasons, and just have a load of notepad files with notes and half scripts currently, and we'll talk about that list in a little bit. On to recently, and the story remains largely the same. Only 2 videos this year, and one of them has already seen an installment in that series, which is a first. Valheim though came out of nowhere. I got into that game for ages. Spent loads of time sailing around the world, fighting trolls and Draga, smashing a few bosses and building a bunch of bases. And to be honest, I only stopped playing the game because I'd spent a dozen hours or more building one giant longhouse on an island in my solo game, and was super worried about getting a troll invasion that would knock it all down and ruin all the time that I'd just spent on it. I made the whole thing out of wood in a solo game, and I defended it a bunch of times from greylings and grey dwarves, but since I had no access to stoneworking yet, had only a wooden stake wall around the perimeter, so one angry troll boy with a big old tree branch could likely swing right through it and one-shot the whole thing, probably destroying my highly organised storage chest wall along with everything else, and I didn't want that. And yeah, backup saves are a thing, and I still have one, just in case that happened, but I spent a while stalling on going back to the game to the point where too much time had just passed. The game is still good fun though, and I would still recommend it, and I do think I will eventually get back to it with my friend Xavier at some point, but for now, we just have a quick video to look back on. Guild Wars 2 was the other recently in video that I did. I'd come back to the game in a pretty big way this year with the expansion announcements and realisation that I was missing a ton of the Icebrood Saga story patches. I decided to go and catch up on that stuff. I actually did the same with the previous time that I did a recently in Guild Wars 2 video, which is funny how that pans out, I guess, but it just means that I had to add a date to the videos in order to differentiate those two. For the most part, I really enjoyed catching up with all the content patches all at once. I say for the most part because some of it was such a drag to go through. See the Champions patch, for example, the rubbish, garbage, boring bleh that is Dragonstorm, and the weirdly grindy dragon response mission spam that you have to do if you go through it today. Man, is not fun to do those, let alone 10 in a row now. Big oof. So yeah, this was just a catch-up progress video. I mentioned the return to story achievements too, which were pretty good until they got super grindy on a few patches. I think the Sandswept Isles one wanted us to do 12 bounties, which is so dull, and going through all the DRMs again in a row, again, took hours of escorting NPCs and listening to them drone on and on and on as if the story is actually really important in them. I did finish them in the end though. I gotta say, the Legendary Amulet is worth going for. It's a reasonable time of investment, but it's pretty good. It's actually a really good reward, actually. And I did, admittedly, enjoy doing it despite what I just complained about. Anyway, same deal here with the Quids In series. I played a lot, I have some ideas for the series, but they just didn't quite make it yet. 2 more miscellaneous videos made it this year though. One because I finally made my Legendary Armor in Guild Wars 2, which is what I called the video, and one talking about the armory system itself and how it has an incredibly annoying restriction. The armor video was straightforward. I just talk about the process itself and how I got it all done. Nothing much to it. But the armory video caused so much nonsense in the comments. Holy crap, man. Now to summarise, this was like a 2-minute video that calls out the fact that the legendary items dump all of their upgrades, skins, stats and everything if you remove them from your templates. And that's super annoying if you use your inventory to change weapons, and that makes ascended items much more convenient to re-equip from the inventory than the so-called convenience feature that the armory was supposed to be for legendary stuff, which makes no sense. And there's so many simple ideas that people had for fixes for this whole thing in the comments, but there was also a bunch of absolutely insane people who were defending the update and calling me out for being wrong about it. I mean, what? I got all sorts of stuff, like people telling me to just use Ascended, bro, which is a stupid solution that avoids using the cool items that you spent ages working towards. I got people telling me to just buy more templates, bruh, like it was my problem and somehow my responsibility to fix that issue. Like, yeah, just because I've got the gold doesn't mean I'm going to spend it on an inferior system that got added to the game. Yeah, these people were just absolute nutters if you ask me, and I don't even know why I engaged them, but hey, there you go. And I've no idea how they ended up justifying those solutions, but that happened, I guess. And for what it's worth, this thing still isn't fixed, by the way, and it probably won't ever be, because it actually does gently nudge people to buy more templates in just a subtle enough way that people don't quite notice it. But I did, and I hate that, so there you go. Let's move on from this ranty section. The last stuff that I did this year was a series of 9 videos on the End of Dragons elite specializations. These were trying to emulate what I did for the Path of Fire ones, that were fairly popular in the end, which was to try and summarise the feel, the purpose, the usability and the fun factor of each of the new expansion's elite specs. I think I did a pretty good job on these, but they were oddly stressful to get done. Since we got quite a bit more time with them this time, I had the opportunity to mess with them all in more situations than the POF ones, leading to what I think was a much more detailed and precise evaluation of all of the specs. The problem and the stressful part comes in with the specs themselves. Now, I really tried very hard to understand what ArenaNet were going for with these designs, and I think I managed to see their niches and their fun parts for the most part. But I had to stretch and struggle for a few of them. I actually don't think that any of them are very good, which is hard to say. I tried to keep those videos as positive as possible, hoping that they'd get refined and find their proper identities as the betas continued. But we've had a couple more since then, and not one of them has had any significant enough changes to improve their sense of identity or their fun factors. And we're less than 2 months towards the release of that expansion now, so... and I get that that is quite a bold claim, and you might say that it's pretty harsh of me to say that they're not that good, but tell me why I'd play any of these elite specs over what we currently already have. Now, I tried to answer this question, and I justified this a number of times as, well, it's a flavour choice, clearly. But with how awkward they all felt in the end, I don't actually think that that's a very good justification, unless the studio makes them more fun to use. And so far, the Spectre got nerfed and lost what made it fun, the Vindicator, the Bladesworn and the Catalyst all got changes that essentially made their mechanics simpler, but still not very interesting, and at that point I gave up trying to enjoy them in the betas after I made the videos. This overall is a pretty big worry for the expansion for me. I don't know what to think yet, but I'm decidedly struggling to see what's going to be good about End of Dragons. They haven't actually showed us much to do there yet because they keep hiding whatever nonsense they deem as major spoilers for the story, but if story is all they have, are we going to have another Path of Fire situation where we end up playing it once for a couple of weeks, enjoy the great story, and then kind of abandon the open world? But maybe this time with pretty crappy elite specs on top of it too. I mean, at least the Path of Fire elite specs really carried it, but the End of Dragons ones? I'm struggling, man, I'm really struggling. And then fishing and skiffs don't look all that great to me either, so... oh, they've got to show us some stuff to be excited about, because they haven't yet, and like I said, 2 months to go. Let's hope that I am wrong about this. And that was all of the videos that I did this year, but there have been a few streams as well. I picked up Dirt Rally 2.0 in summer and have gotten really into that. You'll have seen some of it in the background on this video too, because I just like using it. I've wanted to get back into streaming for absolutely ages, and I'm slowly getting around to it. I've done a few of the online weekly events in the game, which are on the Twitch archives, and I don't think they're really worth uploading on this channel, I don't think, but there's like 5 or 6 of them. Actually, there was a few that I did that I didn't save as well, so, you know, I've got back into streaming a little bit. Although I don't have any major plans to go nuts with streaming just yet, but the reason for these ones existing is that I got a new PC this year. I am still running on a GTX 970 GPU, so it's not perfect yet, but the processor is a 5900X, and I've finally got SSDs for the first time and RAM that isn't from the Dark Ages. So a lot of this year was me just trying out a bunch of stuff that I've not been able to do so until now. The videos since getting this stuff have all been 60fps 1080p, which should now be a standard for the channel and has been a noticeably large improvement from all the older videos. Even just producing them for me has become so much easier, and it's so good to be able to just streamline that process so much. Streams have also hit that same standard, which is again super pleasing, and it lets me do stuff like Dirt Rally 2.0, which is a fairly modern game that I couldn't have even run on my last PC, let alone actually stream it too. I'm enormously pleased with the components in this thing, and it wouldn't have been possible without your support, so thank you, seriously. You lot have allowed me to continue enjoying gaming as a passion. And I did. I took this year and just played a ton of stuff. Some of these games have partial scripts, like I said earlier, and some have more progress and some don't. Some have footage, some have scripts, some have notes, some have just general concept ideas for what to talk about. Whatever. We'll see if some of those videos actually appear eventually, but I'm now just going to list a bunch of stuff that I've played. First up, Baldur's Gate 1, which I mentioned last year. I modded it up. I was enjoying a playthrough as an elf sorcerer with the NPC project mod, and ended up having to pause to build that PC. I haven't got back to it just yet in all the excitement, but I was well up for making a video along the lines of the FF7 review, but we'll see about that. I also tried a bit of Baldur's Gate 3, but it's still in early access and feels a little bit too complex and a little too much like the Divinity series for me, and a little bit too fiddly with the menus, so I'll be waiting a bit further in development for that. Neverwinter Nights 2, another game that I've tried to play like 5 or 6 times or more, and always make it just a little bit further before I take a break that never seems to end. I had a wizard in Act 2 or 3 this time, and had modded it up to make buffing with all the spells after every rest not be so time consuming. But the timing for this was a little bit odd, because I got into an online D&D game around that time, so I was kind of ended up getting my fix for D&D there instead. Divinity Original Sin that I just mentioned, also another RPG. I was playing this on Tactician difficulty and really enjoying it for the most part, but got bogged down with looting and various fiddling mechanics of controlling 4 characters and menuing at once. It's good, I just had to take a break on it too. The Spud Club NPC in Sicil still haunts my dreams. I mentioned Dirt Rally 2, which is a fantastic game. I've already sunk 200 hours into this, and I should probably talk about it properly one of these days. Thief 2014 was not a popular reboot of the franchise, and I wanted to see why. Well, I mentioned it a bit last year, but I finished a playthrough and then stalled on doing a second one, where I wanted to record stuff and make a video for it. I do still plan on doing that. I think it is worth talking about, but it's not that great, gotta be honest. I ended up playing the Spyro Reignited trilogy in January. In fact, last year's video had footage of the game on it. This is a superb set of games there. Definitely want to do a video on those. I also did Untitled Goose Game, and this was a little bit short. I had everything finished in just a few hours, but it was fun while it lasted. I'd recommend it. Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. This was the first modern game that I ran on this PC as a test, and it was flawless. It was a fun game. I might even have some footage of it in this video, but I'm not sure yet. But I did actually want to talk about that game properly again at some point. Star Wars KOTOR 2. It's the first time that I played this. It's the Obsidian developed sequel to the original BioWare game. I wanted to see if it was as good as the hive mind says it is, and was once again pleasantly surprised, because it's great. And if you're into character-driven plot lines and some intricate ideas about what the Force is in the Star Wars universe, along with the concepts of good and evil, then I'd highly recommend it. Again, another one that I definitely have to do a video on, but it was extremely complex to write about, so my notes are kind of scruffy there. I also played some Stardew Valley. Again, there might be some footage in this video. Who even needs an excuse to play this? It's just fantastic. Warhammer Vermintide 2 got some of my time as well, and I wanted to make an updated video on this too now that I'm comfortable playing on the Legend difficulty, and the hordes of enemies look way more impressive at that point. But I didn't get around to it. I was hoping that I'd be able to get a friend back into it, but he didn't seem all that interested. On theme though, Warhammer 40k Space Marine. I wanted to see if Total Biscuit's absolute glee would translate over 10 years later to a non-40k fan. Also, with Space Marine 2 being announced, I actually remembered it existed. I don't think it does quite translate to a non-fan, but it's an okay third-person shooter that probably holds up way more if you're actually into 40k. But, I will say this, it has been a fun intro to the Astartes. I definitely will be using footage of it in this video. And finally, a total sleeper for me, Generation Zero. Another game that I'll have used footage for in this video. This is a surprisingly immersive, first-person looter shooter, where the enemies are all robots and have this distinctive 1980s feel to them. I've been playing this one with Xavier, and I'm consistently surprised after maybe a dozen hours or so, still, at how good it looks, how good it sounds, and how good it feels to be in the environment and exploring its vast emptiness, with the constant threat of being attacked by strange foes that we still don't quite yet understand. And that's pretty much, I think, what I've been playing this year. I'd be interested to hear what all you have been playing this year too, so go leave some comments, inform me of all the things that I've been missing. I'm sure there's tons of games. I mean, Hades passed me by and I still don't really know anything about it. I think that was like last year too. So I'm pretty far behind on a lot of games. So yeah, go tell me about all the stuff that I've missed. Anyway, what I've essentially told myself in that past few minutes there is that I've laid the groundwork for videos. But let's not kid ourselves, I just played a lot of games and enjoyed them. Let's hope that I actually get to talk about these eventually, because I do want to, but what did I say I wanted to do previously last year? How about streaming? Well, they are starting again, and I don't want to tie myself to them or a schedule, so we'll see how they go. Quidzin didn't really get going, nor did the revised format, so time will tell. Recently ins for Thief, Neverwinter Nights, Halo and Divinity. I've all but mentioned these already, but for Halo, wow, whoops, kinda dropped the ball there, didn't I? Skyrim builds, yeah, I do still intend to do these, but the PC swapping put a bit of a spanner in the works there. It's not dead, it's just that I'm not in the mood to play Skyrim at the moment. And finally, Morrowind streams. Again, same deal. I wanted to test the new PC, and Morrowind is hardly a system killer. I do want to play this and share parts of it with you guys, but it isn't quite a priority just yet. So then, what is a priority? What do we expect from me and the channel in 2022? First of all, I think it's time to maybe accept that the channel is always going to be slow-paced with its content production. I'm getting old. It's slow, boys. I'm just not a machine for coming up with talking points, and I don't want to just rehash what other channels already do, so it's just a case of really wanting to make specific content, and that's not something that I can really schedule. Random video essays fall into that category, and one that I'd quite like to make is talking about fishing in Stardew Valley. Really deep diving into what makes it good. And what prompted me there was the last playthrough, which was further prompted by Guild Wars 2 End of Dragons having fishing in it, and it looking like a pretty lacking rip-off of the system in Stardew. So let's talk about why that is and isn't good, shall we, in a further video. Speaking of, hopefully End of Dragons is actually worth talking about. Be it either good or bad, it's got to be on one of those ends of the scale, because if it's mediocre then probably not really worth talking about. So let's actually hope that we do get to enjoy it and that it is good, and that I get to make content for it this year. Fingers crossed, but so far I'm very, very much on the fence about it, even going so far as to say that I'm quite worried about this expansion. Recently and quids in will continue, of course, whenever I actually finish scripts, and on that note, Halo 2 is almost done, but I need to actually replay the game because I forgot a bunch of details from the last half of it. The script is pretty damn long though, which I said that I wanted to avoid, but well, it's Halo 2, it's worth it. And on that note, I'd like to play through Halo 1 on stream just for the hell of it first. I said that I wouldn't do that last year, but screw it, I might just do it instead. And if not, because I'm flaky as hell apparently, casual streams for random stuff will probably just appear at random anyway. I'd like to do Dark Souls 2 eventually, for example, in that random stream thing, and actually do a full playthrough for the most part. I guess it's been a long time since I played that game. I'm probably going to forget bosses and forget where areas are and all sorts of stuff, and let's not mention Horse F Valley, which is a good time. Said nobody ever, but we'll get to it, right? I would also consider doing Final Fantasy VIII, but I'm kind of unsure about that because I actually want to do a full card collection playthrough, and that would bloat the streams massively, so I'm on the fence about that too. It is one of my favourite games for nostalgia purposes. I should probably talk about it at least in a video eventually, but streaming? Maybe. It's there, it's an option. I've got plenty of games that I actually want to play, but I've reserved for streams. So things like Hellblade. Really want to play Hellblade, but I think it would be a good experience to stream it too. So we will see. I could probably run off a bunch of examples, but I think I'll just hold those cards closer to my chest for now. And I think that is about it. I've got a few things I definitely do have in progress. I've got a few ideas, I've got a few hopes for like End of Dragons, but essentially it's more of the same for the channel, I think, unless something comes up that inspires me to do something very specific. Anyway, thanks for listening as always, I do appreciate that. If you want to ask me any questions in the comments, then do go for it, I encourage it all the time. I'd like to hear about your gaming this year too, if you want to share. Anyway, Happy New Year I guess, and cheers!